PHLY Sixers podcast, coming to you live from the endlessly accommodating and wonderful Colorado State University. How you doing, Kyle?
Well, we also have to thank our friends at Restoration
We do.
360 for, getting us out here to this wonderful campus. But yeah,
Repairing everything from mold damage to Sixers relationships. Yes.
big shout out to the people at CSU who have been kind enough to let us, work, operate, set up a real remote studio basically
Yeah.
here on their campus. So been very nice of them to do that. Very accommodating. Happy to be here.
We had a whole bunch of news today, mostly about Joel Embiid, who made his decision on who he will play for with the Olympics. It's not a full commitment that would come later on in the summer, but if he does play, it will be for Team USA. He met with Grant
You were
Hill.
about to say Team Olympics. I heard you there.
I did. You don't have to point every mistake out, Kyle. Jeez. He did make that commitment. He spoke with Grant Hill about that, and that was announced this morning. He spoke about it at length during or after practice today. A lot of the quotes came down to, basically this was a family decision. His son was born in the United States as a U.S. citizen. He's now a U.S. citizen. Obviously, he spent a good chunk of his adult life over here in the United States. Obviously feels a connection to that. I guess what were your overall thoughts on the decision that he made, the reason he came to sort of arrive at that conclusion, and the way he expressed it?
Yeah, so I alluded to this we did a quick hit from the court earlier right after practice, and I said, I'm not the most patriotic or even like interested in the Olympics type of guy, but I think it is cool to see someone like Joel who, he came over here as a wide-eyed teenager,
Mhm.
didn't speak as much English then,
Yep.
and he's built this life and this great career here. He's started a family here and he's setting roots down here. And so, look, I know it's easy to say, like the romantic thing would have been, I'm going to play for Cameroon
Right.
and him and Siakam and whoever else they can put together on the team that they can represent their home country with pride. But I do think it's cool that Joel is now like, this is my home
Yeah.
country. This is where I live. This is where my son. This is going to be what he grows up saying is his home and where he's from. And so look, I believe that because if you listen to Joel talk about his family and the importance of leaving a legacy for his son, I think he thinks about this stuff basically all the time. And so I was not shocked to hear that, maybe it's spin, maybe it's some PR to dress up that he's joining
Yeah.
a super team or whatever. But I do think that's absolutely a part of his calculus. I think it was cool to hear that.
Yeah, and I mean, he admitted that part of it was that the Team USA is guaranteed to make it, whereas Cameroon still has to qualify. That
Yeah.
was a small part of it, but let's be honest, if Joel Embiid plays in the qualifying, like they're probably going to figure it out. But it is his home now. It's been his home for quite a while. His sons might grow up. Imagine like an angry Joel Embiid son being an angry Philly sports fan. I almost hope that he gets traded just so we can spare his son from the demoralizing losses that he would suffer if he stays here. But it does certainly seem genuine. It would be cool to see him play. This is probably the one time in his career where he's at that level where he's, a veteran and knows all the tricks of the trade. Before he started, you start getting worried about maybe injury or aging concerns. This is the perfect time for him to do so. It'll be great to see him do it next year. You hope that there's maybe a little consideration that he had such a long playoff run that he's worried about working too much in the summer. That would be a great problem to have, and we'll deal with that when we get to it. But I think this was like you said, you might want to romanticize the possibility of Cameroon. But I also understand that this is a place that not only has, big pull on his heartstrings, but also they're going to be a hell of a team.
Yeah, well, and so he kind of gets to be the conquering hero now, right? I think there was some reporting after the Embiid news came down that Bam Adebayo will probably also be on Team USA, and big men were a huge problem for Team USA at the World Cup. So having Joel and Bam, who two of the best bigs in the entire league, I think that's a big jolt for the program. And you and I have talked about this a bunch, Derek, over the last few weeks because we're deep in the off season. I just think this is a great experience for Joel to
Yep.
be around. Like everyone looks at the recruiting angle. I get it. That's a really important thing. I think it's as important, if not more important, that he's going to be around like legitimate legends of basketball and guys like Steph
Right.
Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, these guys who have been at the absolute apex of the profession. And he will go into next season. Now, that's a long way away. We don't know what's going to happen with the Sixers between now and then. Maybe he grows dissatisfied with what's going on here. But imagine a world where Joel's coming off, a month and a half of high level, high intensity basketball with some of the best to ever do it. And that gives him a great runway into next regular season. So I know that's a ways off right now, but I think if you're looking at it from a long-term perspective, and Nick Nurse has been involved in international play before, he said the same thing. He's like, look, I think it's basically always a good experience for these guys to get out there and get like good reps during a time when they would just be playing pickup games or doing off-season workouts. So I think this is great for Joel. And if there's any recruitment benefit, certainly that's an added bonus on top of all of this.
And also, just from a purely selfish standpoint, those summer months can be lean. You really have to stretch to find something to talk about. We get some great content out of it.
Hey, buddy, I texted Derek earlier this morning. I was like, we got to start putting together a content plan to sell ALLCITY on us going to Paris next summer. So we'll see if we can make that happen. I won't count my chickens.
At
but
the very least, we will have meaningful basketball to talk about.
yes. So yeah, that was the big headline today. It seemed like everybody other than Mo Bamba was excited for Joel. Mo came over to the scrum today and joked that he was upset that Joel was not going to suit up for the Ivory Coast. Weirdly enough, the Ivory Coast is one of the countries outside of the U.S. I have some jerseys for because I was a big Didier Drogba fan back in the day, despite the fact he played for a rival of the club team that I root for. So I'll show some love to the Ivory Coast. I don't think I have any ties there, so they won't let me on the team. But Mo, I can wave a towel and sit on the end of the bench if you need some moral support. We'll see.
And Embiid did mention, this was something that obviously there was that deadline that France imposed on him. October 10th, they wanted a decision by. That was part of it. He also said he just wanted to sort of get this decision out of the way so he didn't have to talk about it so much when the season started. Obviously there's been speculation about this for most of last year. So he has that sort of, settled.
There were a lot of French reporters who were beating down the door in press conferences. Obviously, I only know very limited French, but it was always about Team USA or Team USA, Les Blues, I should say. And
at least
getting
they call it
Joel's
Team Olympics.
Yeah, oh, that's close.
I was the one with the edibles today. I don't know. I can't explain that one. But I'm sorry, you're going to say something?
No,
I feel like I cut you off.
Go right ahead.
No, I mean, I'm happy for him, and I'm happy for fans that they get to watch it because the Olympics aren't always a must-see event if you're not invested in it. And by invested, I mean like locally invested, not just nationally invested. And I do think international ball is fun to watch, especially when you have the competitors at the highest level participating in it. So it'll be a great summer.
I think it'll dovetail nicely too with what we've been hearing about how the Sixers are setting up their offense, and it's more of a free-flowing, ball-sharing, get up and down type of offense. Everybody touches the ball. I think after this season, Joel will be somewhat prepared for that style. Now, obviously, playing with Steph and LeBron is a little different than maybe – and we love Tyrese Maxey here, but –
and we love Seth Curry, but it's the other Curry.
Yeah, it's the Hall of Fame, all-time leading three-point shooter, Steph Curry. So – yeah, I think he's going to be able to transition into that nicely. And I think, look, if this season is more of a retool year for the Sixers and they're not in that contention group, he can then build off of what he learns playing alongside, being just part of a machine with Team USA rather than everything's got to be all Joel all the time running through him. And so I think that in itself will be a good experience.
Yeah, well, Joel Embiid, who's bracing ball and player movement, as we'll get to a little later on in the show. Before that, a quick word from Restoration 360. And again, thank you very much for Restoration 360 for sponsoring this trip.
2 thumbs up.
Out to Colorado State. When disaster strikes, call the company that cares. Restoration 360, your trusted partner in restoration and recovery. No job too big or small, fire, water, mold, no matter the damage, we're here to make it right. Call Restoration 360 today at 215-273-3592 or visit our website at restoration360.com for more information. Restoration 360, we're here for you every step of the way. Fast, experienced, dependable, available 24/7 because disasters don't wait. Call now at 215-273-3592 or visit them online at restoration360.com.
I really think it's just the way you say, we're here for you. I cannot get the Succession episode and clip out of my head.
I honestly barely even, there are so many memorable moments of that show. That one just hasn't really stuck with me like that.
I have a meme folder, quote unquote, in my phone. I would say 25% of it is screenshots from
Right.
Succession episodes. So my brain is like full.
No, I mean, if I do a secession meeting, it's just gonna be telling you to fuck off
Well,
a million
there's
times.
a lot of those. So
Yeah.
so we wanted to get into today. It was a big theme of today's media availability was the defensive side of the
Mhm.
ball for the Sixers, and I know that the headline
There's
of
two
the
things that came
show.
out of it: aggressive defense and shitting on Doc Rivers.
I
We'll
mean,
get to that.
it's the Doc Rivers shade show has been basically all week, but setting aside the Joel Embiid chasing blocks portion of it, which Nick has been talking about that a lot during the offseason. Today, he was talking about, what they're instilling right now and maybe how they're working up to schemes. They're really starting from the base level with how these guys want to play. And so I'm going to read you guys a quote that we got today. So Nick said, I do have some ideas of some things we're going to try. Haven't really put any of that stuff in yet. I see Danny Green over there. I remember Danny and Kawhi getting mad at me the first time in Toronto because they were wondering, when are we going to do something? And I'm just taking my time trying to build, let's get back. Let's pressure the ball. High hands. Building a lot of the foundational stuff right now. But he goes on to say, I am going to look at one thing tomorrow that I think suits this team. So why don't you check back with me tomorrow? So that's a nice little tease from Nick Nurse,
Yeah.
and we'll see what day 4 of training camp brings. But
And we'll see how open he is at actually talking about that new wrinkle he's added. Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's an important message of this week is that Nick's not coming in and saying, all right, here's the scheme. He's coming in and saying, we have to start back from
Right.
ground zero. Like, this is Nick Nurse basketball. We're going to play aggressively. We're going to get up and down the floor. We're going to share the ball. And I'm going to empower you to be as reckless and risky and aggressive as probably any of these guys want to. And the feedback that we've heard from the players so far is that they're fired up for this. Like they're excited to play that way.
Yeah. No, and he mentioned a little bit that he has a lot of athleticism and length on the wings, like he did in Toronto. I'll push back a little bit. He does, but none of them are necessarily penciled in as like core rotation players, like Oubre and Paul Reed and Jaden Springer. Yeah, they fit that sort of Toronto mold, but we don't necessarily know how much you're going to get out of them or how much playing time they're going to earn. So we'll see how that works out, and we'll see how he adjusts if those players don't necessarily leave the mark that he's hoping to. We did have another good shooting day from Paul Reed. Again, I don't believe any shots in an open gym, but I guess it's better if they're going in than if they're not. So we'll
Again,
take that.
like we said yesterday, I think one of the more notable things is that in these post-practice shooting competitions they're having, it's like him and Danny Green or him and Tyrese Maxey or him and guys that we know can shoot and are being empowered to shoot in games. So I think by pairing him
Yep.
with all those guys, that is a tell in and of itself.
And I definitely do agree that he will empower them. Also, shout out to Guy Russell in the chat mentioning that this is the first time you're not sitting at a 45
Okay,
degree
so
angle.
for
I
the
disagree.
audio,
You weren't doing it Tuesday and Wednesday as well. But those chairs in the studio are comfortable, all right? Like,
for our audio only folks, Guy says, congrats to Kyle for sitting straight in a chair. I swear he's at a 45-degree angle 90% of the time. Here's the joke, Guy. I am not even sitting straight up. I have the tall guy slouch. I'm like 6'3"-ish on a good day, I guess. Depends on the measuring tape that
we're
you're
definitely
using.
the tallest team at
At
PHLY.
PHLY
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's why if we lost at 2-on-2 basketball or 3v3 even with Devon or Rich, I'd be pretty ashamed that we didn't win it. But yeah, that's just kind of my natural slouching position. That's how it goes. But there will be no slouching on defense in a Nick Nurse team. I'll tell you that much.
No, defense was definitely a very big focus. A big part of that also was on Joel Embiid. Once again, he was asked. Joel Embiid this time was asked pretty directly about, Nick says he wants you blocking more shots. How do you feel about that? Then Nick Nurse was asked a follow up question. What did you hear from Nick Nurse on Embiid chasing blocks?
He basically said there is no line that I'm going to set for Joel. What was the exact quote? That was really risky, really aggressive.
He wants him reckless, something like that.
Really reckless. And I think some people hear that and say Joel's going to play 20 games and then suffer. Knock on wood, obviously we hope this doesn't happen, suffer an injury.
Chasing blocks doesn't mean he has to be like running into stands. In fact, that's pretty much putting you out of position to chase blocks. But I get the concern that if he's leaving his feet too much, he doesn't always land on those same feet.
So I think there's a difference between Joel charging down the floor for a chase down block and Joel just jumping at a lot of stuff and saying, I'm going to go after this because I have protection on the back end, help with rebounding, things of that nature. And I know Joel, after practice today, was very happy about being at the top of the blocks leaderboard. That was a point of pride for
He
him.
was, but he also gives like he's always kind of pushed back on I need to block more shots, and quite frankly, he pushed back a little bit today in practice as well. Here's a quote from him: "I've always believed that being a good defender is not just blocking shots and getting a lot of steals.
Yeah.
The best defenders are solid, they do their job, they don't allow shots to intimidate the opposing team." And that's what and he then goes on to basically complain about awards and how we only focus on blocks and steals and yada yada yada. But he then says defense is much more than that. You got to have a high basketball IQ.
Which he's correct.
Yep, you've got to know where to be positioned just to make that first of all they don't get make sure that first of all they don't get in the paint and that they don't even attempt the shot because they're scared of do so. So he basically said like, yeah, I'm happy I led the team in blocks, but also defense is a whole lot more. And I don't think that's necessarily him pushing back against Nick Nurse for wanting to go after blocks. I think it's just acknowledgement that he has that like he probably feels like his defense is underrated because he hasn't had those counting stats and he's trying to do all the rotational things and his shot deterrence things that he feels he needs to.
I would imagine some of that is how he's seen Jaren Jackson Jr. talked about over the last year, where he's far out in front, leading the league in blocks and wins Defensive Player of the Year, and the per minute impact stuff is what it is. And then you get to the playoffs, and he doesn't have, a burly center like Steven Adams
Right.
next to him, and he has a lot of issues in the playoffs because of that. He plays for Team USA. He's in constant foul trouble. And so, to Joel's point, there is way more to defense than simply blocking shots. We've seen over and over again the biggest value that Joel offers is that there are times when guys start driving, they see him slide over, and they think better of it. They kick it out, they reset the offense, and that stalls them for, we could say 3 to 6 seconds. And in a 24-second shot clock environment, that's super meaningful. So, yes, of course, just blocking shots is not enough for Joel. And we have some commenters pushing back saying, has Nick Nurse ever heard of foul trouble? Nick Nurse is not telling Joel to go out there and just like try to decapitate people under the rim. I think the whole premise of the defense, as far as we understand it, is that the guards and the wings are going to play up. They're going to play aggressive. They're going to blitz and hedge, and they're going to be right up in these guys' faces. And that's going to bring a lot of downhill, whether it's a rim runner, whether it's a driver, a lot of players to Joel. And Nick is okay with him going and chasing more block shots instead of, we've seen in the past, though, sometimes he just will look up and turn around and wait for the rebound. He wants one to go after it.
Yeah, look, in the past, in part because this team has been a brutal defensive rebounding team, he has let shots go up without challenging him to make sure he's still in rebounding position. Now, he didn't do a good enough job of that last year because he let shots go up and he still didn't work hard enough to get back in defensive rebounding position.
Yes.
That was maybe the one legitimate gripe you could make about him for much of the regular season last year. So I think there's going to be a little bit like, does he really trust his teammates to clean up the glass? But I think what he's saying is if you chase more blocks and you will deter more shots, it's not an either or. I think he just wants him being more aggressive in the pursuit of contesting shots, not necessarily just getting those numbers.
Yeah, there's a balance to everything, right? When Nick says risky and reckless and aggressive, it's not just, hey, we're going to commit our 4 fouls that we can give in the first 2 minutes of a quarter. It's not that. It's, hey, DeAnthony Melton, you have length, you're athletic, you can create turnovers. I'm going to empower you to jump into passing lanes and things. And there was a Thibault mention within the chat. I think he probably would have loved playing in this style of defense. Now, the shooting is what it is, and Derek and I were no big fans of the offensive impact that he had before leaving. But yeah, so I think you have to look at it like that. That's the recklessness. Hey, you might get beat backdoor on a cut every once in a while because of that. There are going to be some pain points as a result of this. But I think Nick's philosophy is that the gains that you get, the transition play that you can get, is going to be worth it. And unlike in Toronto, where that was basically all they had to create offense, right? The difference now is he's going to bring that aggressive approach that got the Raptors out and running and got them some quote-unquote easy points in transition. And then you still have one of the ultimate half court weapons in Joel. You have Maxi. Maybe you have Harden, who we're going to get to in a minute, I think. And you just have way more. It's a much more diverse scoring team in that way
Yeah.
because of how you're going to set up on defense.
Yeah. No, they should have a lot more diversity than Toronto had just because they have a lot more offensive firepower. And it's a weird thing to say, but like you mentioned, they had to, you know, gamble so much to create turnovers, get out in transition, to really prioritize getting early buckets. That I think that probably compromised them at times. I mean, Toronto was a team where like if you could just solve their perimeter trapping and scheming, you could get open shots pretty consistently. I think there's a balance here in Philly that Nick can find.
Absolutely. So let's take a quick break to talk about our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Things are heating up in the ballpark. Every team playing to finish the season strong, make it into the playoffs. But hey, I know everybody at home is excited. The Phillies are in the NLDS. They are potentially going to beat the Braves. We're hoping they beat the Braves. And with DraftKings Sportsbook, you won't miss a moment of the baseball action. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets, betting just $5 on baseball. And all customers can take a crack at a sweet payday with DraftKings same game parlays, where you string together multiple bets from a single game for your shot at a major payout. So, what are you waiting for? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code PHLY. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on baseball, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code PHLY. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget, Lake Charles, Louisiana. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See dkng.co/baseball for eligibility terms and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply.
All right.
So,
I think maybe the only other thing I had in terms of their defense was how much Joel Embiid talked about their offensive changes. Again, another sort of clear delineation with Doc Rivers, but basically, and I'll find a quote here while you're talking. But basically, saying that if they have more ball movement, if there is more player movement, if more players are touching the ball and initiating, they will be more committed defensively because they're sort of getting those touches. So I think, and look, Joel Embiid says this is how he always wanted to play, and yada yada yada. If you're talking about
maybe a little
offensive
bit of a white
stagnation,
lie
yeah,
on
yeah,
that
yeah.
one.
Talking about offensive stagnation, Joel was certainly a part of that. So I think he's going to have to adapt if he truly. It's one thing to believe that; it's another thing how you react to it. When the game's
And live
on.
it,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we'll see how that happens. But at least he's saying the right things.
So I think I always like when Joel or one of the other main players makes me feel smart when I say something to the
Takes
effect
a lot of
of,
work.
yeah, well, listen, it doesn't happen every day. So you got to savor these moments. But I think Joel's basic point, which you and I have talked about a bunch on the show, is that when you see the teams that go deep into the playoffs and win at a high level, they're teams that have built a culture of sacrifice and sharing, and there's a level of buy-in that honestly is very hard to create if it's just two guys or even one guy dominating the ball. And when the star player, the franchise guy goes cold, there is not that spine, that backbone of, all right, everybody else is going to pick him up, pick them up, because they're not in the flow of the offense. You can't just go from, hey, Joel has a 38% usage rate in the playoffs to, hey, we need DeAnthony Melton to go out and score 20 points tonight, or whoever it is. Someone can't pick up the slack if they're not regularly asked to be a part
Yep.
of that. And it's a switch that you can't just flip on and off. It has to be at the foundation level for your team. And so I've been excited to hear these guys talking about it. I think people at home are probably more excited just to hear Doc Rivers get torched
Yeah.
by these guys essentially. But to me, and Joel said as much today, Derek, you're going to share the quote with us. I just think that this is how basketball needs to be played for a team that has any real aspirations.
Yep. On the ball movement, we all love it. I think this is the best way to win, and always believe that. I never like the idea of just being a scorer. I like to do everything on the basketball court. I want to be a playmaker. I want to score. I want to get my guys involved. He then goes on to say it's fun playing that way, with the ball moving side to side, everybody touching it, but that means everybody's happy, and most importantly, on the other end, everybody does their job. So he's drawing a pretty clear through line there between ball movement and being involved in the offense and giving more effort defensively. I think that's certainly true. I think it's something that Daniel House mentioned the other day. Certainly, when you're a role player, you want to do more than just stand in the corner and shoot open threes.
Yeah.
Now, it'll be incumbent upon Joe to actually follow through with that when the game's going on, when there's a pressure, when people are criticizing him if he only scores 22 in a certain game.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's easy to say it now. It's tougher to follow through with, especially when you have the expectations that he does. But I agree with him. I think it's better if they play that way. We'll see what and this is an area where James, if he's on the team, that's not his strength either. So we'll see how everyone reacts to it.
It's just the human nature side of sports, right? Like guys want to feel like they're involved. It doesn't have to. This doesn't
like, can you imagine if I came out here and you spoke 90% of the time? You'd call to me. I'd be like, "Oh, I'm sorry. What were you saying?" I'd tune you out a long time ago.
It'd be ridiculous. Yeah. So look, this doesn't mean House is going to be running offense or taking 15 shots a game, but he's going to be involved in lot more plays.
If House takes 15 shots a game, I will criticize House and I will criticize Nick Nurse. Don't worry about that.
It just means like, look, there's DHOs and these guys are knowing that they're getting the ball coming off of one of those, and then it's moving to somebody else. There's a back cutter, and it's all just moving machinery instead of, hey, we run the first pick and roll. Joel has the ball at the elbow, and that's where it stops. Mm-hmm. And if you see some of the footage from practice, which I think Marissa has some of it over there, there is a clip of James Harden being involved in all of this. And to your point, Derek, he's probably, if he's not the biggest culprit,
he's the biggest culprit in the league.
I was going to say, it's 1A, 1B with, okay, so this is Maxey, which this is a whole different thing. Okay, so James being involved in these weaves that they're running and passing amongst teammates, and it's not a lot of, obviously in a practice, James is not going to burn 20 seconds of shot clock. But seeing him show up and get involved with all the different looks they're running, Tobias coming off a screen, I just think that what we're seeing and what we're hearing about this team early on is all to the positive.
Sure, as you would sort of
as you would expect.
But was certainly up in the air considering everything going on with the James Harden and the cloud that he had put over the franchise. I think it's probably worth pointing out here that James Harden was not a full participant in practice again today. Yes. He was not playing in the full 5-on-5 live scrimmages, but he's pretty much doing everything up until that point. The only thing holding him back is really the reintegration program, whatever, with the strength and conditioning and working with James and where he feels and just getting him back up to speed. Nick Nurse says he expects it to be soon.
So we have a comment from Money Mar that the ball always finds the star player in crunch time. I wouldn't worry about it too much down the stretch.
Except for last year with James.
But I would say I agree with that. But I also think, look, star players get doubled down the stretch, and star players are going to see exotic coverages, especially in important playoff games. And if the other guys are involved in the offense, even if Joel can still score 40 in a game without dominating the ball like that, and if the other guys are involved and the ball swings their way in a big moment, it's a lot more likely that they're going to make the shot if they've been involved in the rest of the game. And more importantly, as Joel brought up, they're bought in on defense. Like if guys are not involved on offense, it's easy to say it's still their job. They need to get back and they need to play defense. But that's hard, man. When you don't touch the ball you're in the game for 8 minutes and you don't touch it for 6 minutes or 7 minutes out of that 8 minutes, you're not, like, human nature says you're not going to give your 100% best effort on the other end of the floor.
And when we talk about, better ball movement and distribution, it's not so much shots. Although shots will play a part. Like, we've both been on record, we wouldn't mind Joe scoring a little less, taking fewer shots. But it's about, how long you have the ball, how frequently the ball is moving, how you're able to, get the defense out of position. It's not just overall field goal attempts. It's not even like usage rate. It's more than that.
Yeah. So I think they're off to a good start there. I'm very interested to see whatever these concepts are that Nick is alluding to on the defensive side that we're hopefully going to learn a little bit more about on Friday before they head up to Boston for the first preseason game, which again just kills me that Boston is the first game. But yeah, it's all encouraging. And the Doc slander is honestly just unbelievable. Like, every single day we walk in, and it's not really a question about Doc. It's more, hey, what kind of impact is Nick leaving so far? And it ends up being like, man, I didn't want to play that way, or boy, he really fucked this shit up.
Right.
So it's over and over. That's one of the key themes of camp is these guys held their tongue on Doc for quite a while, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
It is definitely fair to say.
Got some Jalen McDaniels shout outs from Nico in the comments. Yeah, that was a weird one this summer, I think. That
Which
they
one?
just kind of let him walk. He didn't exactly get a big deal in
No, but I think
Toronto.
I do wonder if maybe if the Harden situation, like let's say Harden doesn't opt in, they give him like a 3-year deal. They're not looking at cap space as their last hope next year. Maybe that would have been a different decision. I don't know because
Yeah.
you got 2 guaranteed years, right?
Did he?
I think the second year is guaranteed.
I should
At
know
what, like
this.
7 million, I think. Something. Anyway,
Yeah,
doesn't
it
matter.
wasn't a ton of money, but they're saving every dollar, and it all
Also,
matters for the long
yeah,
term stuff.
I think they just didn't trust him as a shooter and a playoff contributor too.
I would have liked to see him under Nurse
Yeah,
rather
I
than
agree.
Doc, because I do think he kind of fits the Nurse mold maybe more than the Doc Rivers setup.
Yep,
But
I agree.
neither here nor there. We'll take a quick break to talk about our friends at GameTime. Phillies are going to be in the NLDS now, guys, so I know you guys are going to be scrambling potentially for tickets. I've already seen some expensive ticket prices quoted elsewhere, and the one thing I can tell you is that you can get tickets through the GameTime app, and you can know that you're getting them at the best possible price, and you can get it up to the last minute with killer deals on the Phillies, but also the Eagles, Sixers coming up, and all kinds of other different events. It's the fastest growing ticket app in the country for good reason. Get images of your seat before you buy. You know exactly what to expect when you arrive. No bad seats at the bank, but still nice to see before you get there. And you can buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets get sent directly to your phone. You never have to dig through your email. That's pretty awesome. And snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code PHLY, $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So, I think Harden is probably the other big looming thing. He's the big
We got
looming thing.
30 minutes through the show, and we barely even mentioned him. And that look, he's a part of the
It's
team.
a nice break,
He's
right?
a big part of the team, but we've been talking about him a lot, and it was nice to have a change up here.
Yeah, but listen, the news is the news.
I'm not saying it was wrong to talk about him. I'm just saying it's nice not to talk too much about him.
Yeah, so I would say because of the Team USA stuff and because James has, by all accounts, just been
Normal.
professional and normal since he got here, there were not as many James-related questions today. As Derek has already alluded to, we were told that physically he's not all there yet. He did not participate in maybe I guess it was like the scrimmage portion of practice, which wasn't extended or anything, but that was the portion that he missed. And the medical team seems to be pretty confident that he's scaling up well and he'll be fully involved soon. Now, obviously, the looming question at the time or right now is, will this continue? And I think, Derek, we've had conversations with all kinds of different people.
Nobody
up to this
knows.
point.
It's amazing how many people you can talk to, and I've never talked to this many people and have them all give the exact same answer, which is nobody has any idea how long this is going to last.
It's a whole lot of talk to me tomorrow, talk to me next week.
Talk to me in an hour.
Yeah, I mean, down to that minuscule amount of time. And so I wish that we had, definitive answers for you guys. Is this just James is back now and things are good? Will he get traded tomorrow? It's really difficult to say because whether you're talking to the Sixers, you're talking to people close to Harden, I don't think anybody truly has a handle on how this is going to unfold. I think, to me, the key points are still the same, where he's on good terms with his teammates.
Yep.
Everything is above board as it relates to them. And I do think we've been given indication that there have been productive talks with Nick Nurse and, buying into his vision for the team. Obviously, that's really important. There was some mixed chatter about his relationship with Doc and how
Yep.
things shook out there, but
I wouldn't even really say it mix. It's leaning pretty heavily in one direction.
for sure.
I will
So
never forget the answer that he gave after. I say that, but I don't actually know the exact words. But it was so obviously like, "Get this dude the f out of here" after Game 7 in Boston.
yeah,
That I think we can say that comfortably.
yeah. So I think the starting point for James and Nick in a good place. I think there was at least some level of familiarity because Nick was at least in the Houston
Yep.
organization while James was there. So there's a little bit of a connection there. I don't want to overstate that certainly because Rio Grande is not the Houston Rockets proper, but they're at least familiar with one another. I think that gave them a good starting point coming in. And so, look, it's again, we are going to probably have to keep you guys. We're not going to do a daily segment or anything, but we're going to have to update you guys pretty much constantly on this. There'll be a lot of twists and turns. I know that's annoying. I know people probably wake up and think just want some finality, right? Including James Harden and
Hmm.
including the team, but it doesn't appear that that's coming anytime soon.
No, no, it certainly doesn't. And quite frankly, with the way the trade market is, like, I think these two sides are going to have to deal with each other for at least a little bit. And whether or not there's ever a chance that that can be more than a couple month, reunion, a couple month relationship, I think there's a lot of skepticism from pretty much everyone involved. Like I said, everyone is in lockstep that nobody really knows how this is going to play out. But for 2 days, it's been a normal, functional, happy franchise. And I do think, you brought up Nick Nurse, and Harden was certainly involved in the coaching search. He gave his blessing for Nick Nurse. That relationship there, I think, is important. He seems, by all intents and purposes, to be interested in playing for Nick Nurse if he had gotten the contract that he wanted. Like, this really, between the coaching and the city and his teammates, this really just comes down to those contract negotiations and not getting the offer they thought they were going to get before free agency hit. And now neither side really having the trust that the other is going to be bought in long term. It's a shame.
It really does speak to just how important open communication is too, right?
Yeah.
Like by all accounts, no matter who
So
you
you're
talk
saying me
to,
not talking to you for 24 hours straight was maybe not the best thing leading up to this show?
I just think that it's clear from both sides that there was a breakdown somewhere. Now, each side has their own spin on it. Daryl will tell you this, and the Sixers will tell you this. Harden and his people around him will tell you that. And what they agree on is that something went wrong, that this person was not in touch with this person, and James felt a certain way because of the time that he spent with
Yeah.
Daryl.
I think
Look, in
certainly.
fairness, they've been together a decade,
Yeah.
so I understand why there's some hurt feelings here.
I think certainly both sides will agree that the initial breakdown came in the fact that there wasn't communication leading up to free agency. Now, why there was a lack of communication, the two sides will disagree on. What that lack of communication meant, the two sides will disagree on. But certainly, ever since leading up to June 29th or whatever, there was a breakdown in communication, and things have just never been the same since.
Yeah, so I wish I could give you guys a great answer and say James will be traded on October 24th for XYZ, but I
If you
don't
could
know if
predict
James
that
is going to show up
19 days out, that would be pretty freaking incredible, man. I
I
would
don't
want
know
a
if
lot
James
of
will show up
information from you.
tomorrow and even want to be here. That's
Yep.
the whole thing. So that's been interesting. There was a report from Searit, I don't remember, Searit Sohi at The Ringer
Mhm.
about James and Daryl's relationship. And I'd say a lot of it is stuff that probably you and
Yeah.
I were already familiar with, but was a good summary of everything that has happened up to this point. And as we said when our friend Yaron Weitzman put out another story on this earlier in the week, I think it's just a clash of two very different personalities that were on the same page for a long time, and because they're so different and they're how they operate and what their value systems are so different, once there was a minor break from the
Yeah.
path, that was all it took to
I mean,
take the house of cards down.
it's real easy to be on the same page when you both agree that James is worth a max contract. Once there's a disagreement in that, things can get ugly real quickly. And I really hate. I feel like it's reductive to say this is about the money, but it's about the money, and it's also about the respect that athletes tied to that money. But it's about the money. It's really, I think, quite that simple. All right, we will finish this show off in a second, but before that, a quick word from Foco. And again, if you have any questions, drop in the chat. We might have time to get to one or two of them. Foco is a leading. I saw Jamie was modeling
A
the
lot of
overalls the
Foco
other day. Yep, so,
overalls around Philadelphia
great
right
for
now.
Phillies playoffs. Foco is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. It's the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. With us now squarely in football and tailgating season, and also the playoff run, it means it's time for overalls, hoodies, hats, sunglasses, bags, everything you need for a game. Foco has hooked PHLY up and provided awesome pieces for our sets. Foco always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description. For all non-presale items, use a promo code PHLY for 10% off.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting into Phillies or Sixers overalls anytime
If they
soon.
win a
If I had
if
to
they win a
guess.
World Series, you gonna don the overalls? No, maybe a
Okay,
pajamas
here's my
or something.
commitment. If the
I'm
Sixers
not
win,
making a commitment.
if
By
the
the way,
Sixers win a title, I will wear a pair of Sixers overalls. How about that?
okay.
I think that's a fair ask of them after all the
So
pain they
do
put
I have to
everybody
now
through.
root against them?
I don't know. It depends on if you want to see me in overalls or
Well,
not.
no, but it also depends on, like, that would obviously be great for our show. It'd be great for the city. I have a lot of friends and family who are huge fans. Like, it would be great for them. I have many reasons to want the Sixers to win a championship, but now I have one very big reason to hope that they fail. I'm in a real tough spot now.
Okay, we have a question from Bill asking, do you see Springer getting minutes? Springer was name dropped by Nick today at one point, talking about the types of players and defenders that they have. That Jaden Springer was in a group of, and this is Nick's quote, feisty dudes, and that they have a lot of
Sure.
guys who can get into your chest and want to and can disrupt things with their athleticism. I do still think if you look at who he's being grouped with a lot of the time, I wouldn't say that he's like, oh, yeah, he's definitely going to be in the rotation. If anything, would be on the fringes, but does fit in that defense aggressive wheelhouse that Nick really likes. And honestly, I was looking through some of the footage the Sixers posted because we're not seeing tons
Yeah,
at all.
we don't see jack shit. Like, we see 15 minutes of shooting.
Hey, look at that. Brian C says, I'd like to see Kyle wear overalls in June. So we have at least one supporter in the chat of me in overalls. Anyway, we did see there was a drill the Sixers went through at some point. And if we ever see this in a game, I'd be flabbergasted. But it was Jaden Springer, Joel Embiid, Paul Reed, and Mo Bamba together, which the three bigs alone is just like an insane concept. The only way you're even theoretically getting close to making that work is putting the two best shooters that you have on the team on the floor, and that just
if that lineup happens, just kill me now.
And so we're also going through footage of Tyrese Maxey speed in these practices has been unbelievable. His teammates have talked him up pretty much every day. Danny Green today in Colorado said something to the effect of his growth has been tremendous. He's obviously been a high character guy all throughout the time, dating back to Kentucky amateur level, and has gone up as a shooter like 10% from the time Danny was playing with him as a rookie until now.
Yeah, he made a joke that Danny had said that he couldn't shoot, which I think was Danny claims was taken a little bit out of context. He was just saying go under the screens. Yep.
Yeah, so rave reviews for Maxey, and even Nick has gotten into the defensive side with him too, saying he's somebody that they can maybe use for some pressure defense. And Tyrese wants to get after it defensively, wants to get better. Now, Derek, as you and I both know, wanting is only part of the battle on the defensive end. There's only so much you can make up for with size and all that. But we're hearing all good things, and there's a long way of saying Jaden Springer is on the radar, but I think still, from what we can tell, on the periphery.
Yeah, and it's like we'll have so much better of an answer for this after Sunday and after 4 preseason games.
Yeah.
It wouldn't completely shock me if early on they just gave him a chance just because they need what he can provide so much. And he's so unique on this roster. Will he keep it? I don't know. Will Nick give it to him? I don't know, but it wouldn't completely stun me if they're so shorthanded.
They also have to make a decision on contracts, right?
100% by the end of the month. Yeah. Is it before the season or the end of the? I should know.
I never remember if it's the date or the start. I
Right.
think it's the date, if I remember
But yeah, for a
correctly.
team that wants cap space, like that's what, a $4 or $5 million option for next year. That's significant. It's not huge, but it's significant. And we've seen them not, we've seen them decline fourth year player options because these can escalate pretty quickly in salary. It would be great just to give him a look. I mean, like I said, everyone else that can sort of hypothetically fill that role, even just looking at a wing player, Oubre, House, they're sort of known commodities. You know what you're getting. You know their upside. You know their downside. A lot of downside, especially in Oubre. Give him a shot. Just see if there's anything there. Willie, like I said, Willie Stick, I have no idea.
Yeah, well, depending on what happens with James, there also might be a just giant opportunity minutes wise that they need to fill, and
Yeah.
that's going to be put together by committee.
I think we have a good question here from Ishmael. Why would James need to live up? Why
to live up
to ramp up for live drills? I can't read. I'm sorry. You're expecting way too much.
That's like half your job. The other part is talking, and you couldn't do either there.
So I think there's an easy explanation for this. There is all the other players, or at least most of your players, have been in Camden for weeks, if not a month, playing scrimmaging. Informal coaches can't really have too much of a say in that, but playing 5-on-5 basketball. James
just like there's no tampering in the NBA.
Right.
There's also
these are completely unorganized,
voluntary workouts. Yeah,
James has not been participating.
I'm not making any accusations at the Sixers, by the way.
I'm making accusations on every team in the league.
I mean, I grew up playing. I played high school sports and everything else, and it's like,
right.
You knew voluntary stuff was not
right.
voluntary then.
Yep.
So then imagine being a professional athlete.
No, I mean, I had the same thing playing high school football. He said, yeah, these workouts are voluntary, but it's also voluntary whether I play you. Now, James isn't the same because
a little bit different. Neither one of us was James Harden, put it that way.
You don't know.
I do know, Derek, or you wouldn't be sitting next to me right now.
No, I'd be retired on an island sipping them. Anyway, it's playing 5-on-5, scrimmaging, even an informal one, is completely different than playing, doing shooting drills with a coach. Like, you just can't really replicate it until you're doing it. It's the first time he's playing in that kind of a structured environment. It makes sense that it would take him a little bit of time. That isn't even really a statement that he's not in shape or he didn't take his offseason seriously. It's just different.
Yeah. I mean, by all accounts, he came in good shape.
He looks
right.
Again, we saw him for maybe like 2 minutes.
For the first time.
Yeah, and it was for very brief, and then he was off the court. But he looks good.
Yeah, doesn't appear impacted by the altitude, which Harry in the chat asked us.
I've been fine, but that's mostly because the Jeep that we rented has been doing fine too. I'm not exactly exerting myself.
We have not had to ride bikes or go on runs.
There is a bike shop right across the street.
I think I'm good. We're out of here tomorrow evening, so buying a bike for 24 hours essentially doesn't seem like the wisest purchase I would have ever made.
Did you ever consider doing like a cross-country bike? I have known people that have tried it now. Okay.
Hell no. I mean, I have a decent bike that I don't ride it as much in the city anymore. City bike riding is not really for me. I like trail riding, but yeah, I can't say fallen off the horse because it's a bike. I've fallen off the bike, I guess, whatever the euphemism would be for that.
You don't ride your bike as much as you used to.
Yeah, that's all I'm trying to get at here. The other part of it with Harden too that someone brought up, don't want him pulling a hammy or anything. There is the motivation for them to not have him get hurt if they're going to trade him, right? Like if James gets hurt, then all of a sudden it's like
if you've got a disgruntled and injured James Harden, like you're not getting a first-round pick.
Yeah, so I think they're not ever going to say that, but I would imagine that's part of the calculus that they're going to be extra careful. And look, frankly, I'm sure they're not expecting James is pissed off enough as it is. They're not going to try to run him into the ground at training camp after this summer of discontent, so to speak.
Any other real quick takeaways from camp here?
Well, I'm getting asked by people, any good Colorado munchies, since there was a bunch of
honestly,
weed talk
that taco
yesterday.
truck the other day was pretty good.
So this will definitely make me sound like I was smoking some reefer, but I found a taco truck in the parking lot of a Sam's Club that was it's walking distance from where we're staying. And the way you know that it was good is that it's 5 stars, but there's on like Google, Yelp, wherever, but a very small amount of ranking. So it's not like a tourist trap sort of deal. You walk up and their version of storage for the drinks was a bunch of coolers on the ground with Doritos and all kinds of other, things that you would want to drink with Mexican food. And they had some wonderful tacos that honestly, I was going to ask Derek after this if he wanted to go over there again to get some
It was pretty
food.
good.
So
It was pretty good. We had a good meal last night. It's I don't think I always don't get to eat as much of like the great local spots as I want to because I feel like you're always behind when you're on a trip like this, and a lot of my travel tends to be work related. So I really it kind of pisses me off. Not pisses me off, but it's frustrating. I'd like to experience more of the local dining. That taco truck was good. I'd definitely go back there.
Well, and Sam Amick, who, if you guys are not familiar with, longtime national NBA guy, is at the Athletic currently. He said to us earlier today, he's like, earlier this week I was thinking I'm going to eat local and find some cool spots, and then yesterday after we were done, I was like, man, I just really want Chipotle. And it was just like one of those things where it's
Yeah.
like when you're on the road and you're busy and you're running
Yep.
around and doing different things, sometimes it's
You
just
know what you want.
you want the familiarity. And I think that honestly, it's a big thing with players too.
Mhm.
Like a lot of players are like, I remember Markel Fultz was a big Benihana guy, which
Okay.
that was really hyper specific because I feel like Benihana that's kind of like an 80s, early 90s thing where it was really popular. So I don't know how it survived long enough for Markel to be
Right.
Mr. Benihana. But yeah, a lot of these guys, there was a story a while back that Cheesecake Factory is like
Yep.
the NBA place because the menu is absolutely enormous and they know that there will be a Cheesecake Factory in
Right.
every city. So
And like 70% of the menu might be mediocre, but you'll find something that they do well.
yeah, I don't want to. No, I'm not going to disparage any chains because you never know who could be a sponsor one day. I would say Cheesecake Factory, outside of the cheesecake, would not be high atop my rankings.
Like
I've actually
if you
had
don't
arguments with Kendall about it
if you don't
before.
want me to disparage you, give us money. It works.
Hey,
It
exactly.
works.
If you want us to sing your praises, I'm
Yeah.
happy to, but you got to cut the check. That's the deal.
One more here from Paul Kim. What do you predict the starting lineup to be?
So Derek, actually, you had an inclination based on a small bit of footage that we saw earlier
Yeah.
of the
So
lineup
Nick has
combinations.
been breaking the team down into 4 groups of 5. And there was a couple clips there where there was a blue team and a gray team. And the blue team was the starters. You had Embiid, you had Maxey, and you did then have Melton on that squad, and you had Tucker wearing a gray jersey. Does that really mean anything? No, but we've talked before where it seemed like when Nick was asked about this in the past, he gave sort of like non-committal answers, which tends to, maybe give a little bit of lean you towards the challenger, not the incumbent.
Mm-hmm.
I do think the way Nick kind of plays, he wants to get out there and run. He wants to force turnovers. He wants more ball handlers. I think that probably lends itself to Melton. I would guess, and this is based on nothing but, maybe a little bit of tea leaf reading. If I had to guess, it would be Harden, Maxey, Melton, Tobias, and Embiid.
Yeah, and look, if they're going to play this ball movement, body movement, more cutting type of
Melton
offense,
fits better.
Melton fits way
Yeah.
better. There's actually a clip somewhere on Sixers Twitter. I don't know where it is, but of Maxey running point and running a pick and roll, and then Melton cutting off the corner and scoring a layup. And look, that just God bless PJ Tucker for everything he's done, everything he can do defensively in the corner 3 shooting. But when we saw him try to cut in from the corner and score at the rim last year,
Wasn't graceful.
not that DeAnthony is Michael Jordan finishing around the rim or anything, but just the pace at which he can get there lends itself to, all right, he might be able to get some open layups that PJ getting there would take, I don't know, half the shot clock.
Yeah. Yeah. Just Paul Kim just mentioned he subscribed to us. Just subscribe to us. We appreciate that. Again, if you're listening on audio, go check us out. PHLY Sports on YouTube. We publish 5 days a week. A little more interactive here on the YouTube stream. Hit the bell notification. You can get notifications for when we stream.
And obviously, always hit the thumbs up on the stream. And
yeah,
certainly,
I'll
if
do
you're
that right now.
if you're
Thank
one
you
of
for reminding
our
me.
if you're one
There
of
we go.
our video people, which thank you all to you guys that are with us all the time. We have a lot of regular chatters now. I find that very cool. Also, subscribe to the audio feed. Helps us out a lot. PHLI
Yeah.
Sixers, if you look that up on
Look,
wherever
if you
get your
can,
podcasts.
watch it on video and also download it on your podcast
We'll
player.
take all the views.
Yeah.
All the views are good. But yeah, it's been a real joy to have you guys. Look at that. We have Akil in the comments saying, make sure y'all go hit that like button.
Yeah.
got all the support from these wonderful people. So
It is. I will say it is fun interacting with everybody on the show. It's a
yeah,
good value add for
it's
sure.
very humbling that people spend
And we
a part of every single day
Yeah.
with us. I think that's extremely cool.
makes me
So
a little bit concerned about what else you don't have going on in your life, but we appreciate
no,
you.
I wouldn't say that. We have people checking in from their jobs and internships and everything else.
Just be
So
safe. Don't get fired over us.
don't get fired. You can
Yeah.
always put it in a tab so your boss can't see it. So
Yep.
that's all I would say there.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Kyle, for jumping on. We'll have one more of these shows here.
One quick one from Brennan
oh,
before we go asked, what does playing time for the main guys
Kyle,
look
I'm
like for
trying to
Sunday?
get those tacos. Come
I
on, man.
understand. So, Brennan, we don't exactly know yet. That's probably a question that'll come up tomorrow, final day of training camp. What are they looking at for PT? But now we're heading out of here, right? And once again, thank you to the wonderful people at Colorado State for hosting us. Shout out Restoration 360. And we will see you guys at some point tomorrow.